Right.
And I think that was the first day I had asked.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
Yeah, that was hard. That's what I came out as a national before is to service persons. Right? Your mom for a second.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Right. That's one of the problems is crash. So it's not that easy to.
And I have to show you some really great shoes that I got to slip on that actually still work really well when I had my shoulder surgery and I couldn't tie my shoes.
What size are you?
Normally, 8 after 9.
Well, you should be a 10.
Well,
Then I can still.
yours 10.
Yeah, well, I am. The thing is, since my crash, I've got one foot.
All right. Wider, bigger.
Bigger than the other.
Yeah.
See, we've even started to brand our presentation. Thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Then we were trading moving stuff over.
So you didn't send me your title, so I just kind of used the last one. So
Yeah, that's right. Well,
it was 2 years ago.
It's more about what I talk about.
Yeah. Are these are snacks and treats?
No,
Okay.
I don't think.
I'm like, they're Pop Tarts, they're
No.
granola bars, Capri Suns.
The students said you would be great.
Have we managed to?
Well, I sent you a new email with records.
Okay, I will.
We've been able to open up your value that
Again.
Usually it's really just always. You're just super excited.
Hello, David, Mary. We got one. Read you tonight. Have a very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Now, yeah, share your screen and see how that works.
don't take it personal.
No, not at all, not at all. Always a challenge to get Macs and PCs to talk.
No, it's a new Mac where I haven't got it set up.
Right, right. Yeah, you have to. Starts with the letters 9, or numbers 9.
Yeah. Do I want to announce? Yes, of course I do. I do this. For a great cartoon, Zoom cartoon.
That is good. You've joined. You want to go ahead and mute your speakers, I think. Here's so much.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
Of course, I'm going to be speaking down the microphone.
and their microphones. If you can see up on the ceiling there, there's a microphone here, and there's a series of microphones.
Wow.
But our experience has been that the closer you are to this one, the easier it is for people that are
Which one?
to be able to hear you.
Which one?
The one right up here.
Okay.
No. Share.
Yes.
See the one up there. So click share sound.
I just did it here. What time is the theoretical kickoff?
6:30. Yeah. So make sure it's the work.
Please share, restart your audio sharing. we got the spinning wheel.
Beautiful.
Now, so check microphone, that's fine.
And you're just sharing your screen? Oops. No screen.
But under browser, I do not want to know.
You'd actually go to your screen.
Oh, there we go. I'm using my mic.
Go back to this book here. Let's go to auto settings.
Just use your mouse video.
So now why don't you go ahead and play one of your.
Yeah. My share with you now. You see.
Yeah, yep, you're right behind it.
Something playing in the background. No.
It's not moving yet. Instead of sharing your screen, can you share? Yeah, so go ahead and stop sharing. Go ahead and close your screen.
Right, so now I'm going
So
to
go to Zoom. And then,
share.
oh, it is. So then go to the keynote. Right. It's not playing a video.
It's an air. Running around,
It is not.
Wait a minute, wait a minute. Another 2 seconds. No, that's my voice. So that's my voice.
No. Maybe I have prevented videos. Maybe.
Good time, you said camera with that.
Yeah, let me look. It might well be my settings somehow are preventing. So, let's see what I can do.
Could have taken $1,000.
I know, right? All through the kids. Down the hall.
There are 4 people that are signed in.
That must be 4 classrooms filled with 50 people
Possibly,
each.
possibly.
That's right. 4 lecture halls. That's important. How old is the leaders?
Sure. Not good.
I need a master. I'm very good.
reason he's prohibited from showing his videos. There's supposed to control panelist computers. Let's do it.
Yeah, the $1,000 comment flying from land to here, they were offering $1,000 for 5 feet. Change it. I was like,
This is
yeah. Can't take you one way. Oh, you're good.
okay. Just show it shared it as the screen.
Oh, that might be supposed to. Thank you.
No, I wouldn't.
Oh, you did.
So maybe. Yes, because. So with the indicator, that was the first time I did one. So it's not any. Pretty relaxed right there. No, let's get to the video. The video's playing. That's next.
Hey!
So that was it. The outline.
There we go.
All right, so go ahead and get back to your opening slide. So, yeah. Just play, it's right, you know, so we are ready to go, sir. And
That's not good.
yes, this is.
Anybody else?
All right, well, it's. I'll take a sip of my Earl Grey. Thank you all for coming. How many of you are associated with WIU and how many are just here for fun? Mostly. Anyway, so it's nice to have a mix of, and actually the WIU recently changed its policy for meetings so that we now have full attendance when there's meetings, not for classes. But for meetings, we can have full attendance in the rooms. So we were approached by Dr. Van Bush, has some official title at IAVSU, indeed, and suggested that it might be nice to be able to host a presentation by Dr. Rasmussen regarding their new painted dog exhibit and show us a little bit about painted dogs themselves. And we thought it was a great opportunity. So our Student Honors Association, represented by Brandon Weber here and others, Stacy also this time, we decided that this would be a good thing for us to sponsor. And so I don't want to take up any more time, but I want to thank Joel for suggesting this, for Dr. Rasmussen for coming, and for being patient with me as we figured out all the technology. But I think we're ready to go. We have a number of people that have joined as attendants from home. So I will join separately on my phone, and if anybody has any questions through Zoom, those of you who are listening, feel free to do that, and I will try to respond to them as they come up. Or if you give them to the speaker, I will try to answer for you. I'll let Joel call.
Thank you. So as Jim said, my name is Joel Vanderbush. I do actually have a title. I'm a curator of conservation and education at IAVSU. And one of the great things about the ability to work with conservation partners like Dr. Rasmussen is to share their stories. And for us at the zoo, we are storytellers naturally. You know, it is important to tell the stories of these endangered species and for animals and habitats and biodiversity as a whole. To get people to really understand what it's about. It's not good enough just to raise awareness. Although raising awareness is wonderful, we have to step up our game so that we can actually take conservation action, right? And so one of the things we often say at the zoo is that we educate to inspire people to take conservation action. It's one of our guiding principles in our education department. And we have one of our educators here, one of our conservation educators, there's Kira, there. So you may have seen some pieces when you first came in. All of those pieces, if you do make any donations to support Dr. Rasmussen today, there is a QR code over there that you can scan to make any donations for those items or just general donations at all. But the whole point with conservation action is we as a zoo can only do so much, right? But when we partner with those organizations in the field who are on the ground doing that work, then it just reinforces the purpose of our zoo, right? Because conservation really is the purpose of the zoo. And yes, we like to have people come visit our zoo, and we'd love to educate, and sure, we love to sell some things at a gift shop or something like that, but it has to be a greater good and a greater goal for why zoos exist in conservation instead. So for us, we started our relationship like three and a half, almost 4 years ago now. Yeah, I know, it's like we all get confused with the last 2 years of the pandemic. This is actually the fourth, so this is the fourth visit. So yes, it's been at least 4 years. 5 years. 5 years. That's 2 years. Right, exactly. So it's the fourth visit that Greg has made here to the Quad Cities. He is definitely our most active partner when it comes to coming here to do his presentations. And you know, we are thrilled to be bringing African painted dogs as a endangered species to our zoo, to add our 13th endangered species. And so we are looking forward to that. Construction should start sometime this year. We don't have the exact dates on that, but least we know something is gonna happen in 2022. And so we're very happy to welcome back our conservation partner, Dr. Rasmussen.
Thank you very much, Joe. Right, Rob Several can hear this then. Can everyone else hear on?
You're good.
We're all good, okay. Right, well, it's great to be here again, and I just want to reinforce that it is important that these partnerships are aware around. And ultimately, spreading conservation word is just vital. It's not done, you know. And one of the things I always say, I said something along the line. I think Jane Goodall said something along the lines of, what we need to solve conservation problems is what we call a critical mass of conservation. It's not what is a conservation? It's somebody who cares, a person that cares. And if we can attain that critical mass of conservation, someone who sees trash as a problem, for example, that's a conservationist. It's not necessarily somebody who's out there, like this idiot here running around crashing planes in the ground and studying painted dogs. So I'm just going to lead you through some of my journey over the last 35 years. I've been spending 35 years working with painted dogs. And the exciting thing, we were working with any animal or any species that you never stop learning. And that's one of the exciting things I think about, we've talked about it at lunchtime today, is that, you can even make this sharpening marker interesting if you know enough about it. So, painted dog. Well, when I started 35 years ago, this involving dog population was some 200, plus or minus 200 dogs. The status was that they were being slaughtered by ranchers, much the same as the wolf is still slaughtered today. And I was quite devastated how quickly it happened. Like the second they left the national park, given 2 weeks, the packs were wiped out. The branches had their posses on them. There were other issues like snaring, but it was very minimal. And then roadkill was a big problem. And as we all know, certainly poaching and roadkill are a global problem. Ranchers killing carnivores is also a global problem. So I against that backdrop, I started with quite humble beginnings with a vehicle that didn't work very well, and a tracker that couldn't track. This is amazing. The picture always makes me laugh, because how on earth did that vehicle? And that is in the middle of nowhere in the bush somewhere. How on earth that even got there? I don't know. But anyway, that's Africa. One of the things I love about it. What has changed since 1987 is that I have tractors that can track, and my vehicles still don't work very well. So it was 1987 that I saw my first painted dog, and those days we knew absolutely nothing about the species. When I say nothing, we knew they ate meat, and we knew they lived in packs, and that was about the state of knowledge of a painted dog in 1987. What we didn't know is how much was said to be true about them, like they were putative carnivore cattle killers. We didn't know that was the fact. And so, for example, one of my, in conservation research, you always have to focus your questions really, what do I really need to know? And whilst there's always, the standard latitudinal or longitudinal studies where you find one pack and study it to death and then see do all packs do the same thing. And what I didn't know about painted dogs was anything about their behavior, nor did anyone else. And one of my first instances with painted dogs made me realize that I was in for a shock about a lot more other things. And I was tracking this particular pack, and suddenly I hear an interaction with lions. And I get into the field and get right to the point where it will hand. And there's a dog lying on the ground, he can't even lift his head, he's as good as dead. And I managed to get a radio message to a vet and said, what can I do? And I said, the dog can't even lift his head. In that situation, everyone's worked with animals, they get to that point where the eyes are glazed. And you think, well, there's not much we can do. Euthanasia would be kind if we knew what. And the vet said, well, there's nothing I can do. I can't get there and trying to calm me down and say, "What's nature?" And I'm like, "Well, what is nature anymore?" Which is a fact, isn't it? A lot of our natural parks, are they really nature anymore? Which to me is a very question we need to think about. And so I saw the dog, left it, came back the next morning at like 5 o'clock to see what had happened. Was it still dead? Was it dead? And it was gone. And there were drag marks, which indicate the body had been dragged away. And presumably, in my mind, it was hyena. So I continued following the pack that had been 10, 11, and was now 10. And suddenly noticed one individual dog. This dog's brother, the injured / dead dog's brother, kept disappearing every single day. And I'm like, where's he going every day? It seems like new behavior that I hadn't picked up before. So one day I got a tracker that could track, and we walked about 10 miles. And we get to a point where this dog, and this was 2 or 3 weeks after the event, where this dog had been going every single day. And it was to his brother, who wasn't dead, and he was feeding him every single day. And this was the first case of a species actually looking after their siblings every week. And then I, of course, wondered whether this was a singular incident, and then I realized, no, it wasn't. This is something that was big, just right across packs. And that they'll help the old, they'll help the sick. And there's always one thing they're really amazing at, is division of labor. And this is the very dog. You see that wound on his neck, and this is 3 months after the accident. Well, after the mauling, basically, that's not an accident, that's mauling by line. I mean, this dog's head almost looked like it was coming off when I first saw it. And then I realized, there was a lot more to know about the dogs. And I started also telling my story to the ranchers, and they were like, "Can't believe that these things would eat themselves." And even in those days, there was so much prejudice that even wildlife biologists were biased against the species. They'd been almost honey-fed this predators are not good for game parks, but they eat impala. Not like in Yellowstone, really. Wolves were no good for Yellowstone. Of course, we all know that's the they've turned the system around because the predator, once you remove the carnivore predator, the predator then becomes the herbivore. And there's only predator on trees rather than on other species. Well, what do they eat? Well, painted dogs will eat anything from a small to large antelope. You'll see in the top right corner, there's a kudu bull there, probably weighs 500-600 pounds at least. Give you a little hint, that kudu's run into the pan to avoid being caught. My research showed some great data that the kudus make the decision like this. Painted dogs are one of the most successful predators. But he's made the decision that I've got an 80% chance of being killed by painted dogs if I'm on land. If I go into the water, I've got a 30% chance of being killed by a crocodile. Painted dogs won't make the same decision. If I try to catch that kudu, I've got a 30% chance of being killed by a crocodile, but I've got no chance. So therefore, I'll stay on land. And then interestingly, because it's such a large animal, smaller animals, the dog will make the same decision. It's like, if I can get in there, pull it out like one of those animals on the right, the top right is Daika, and the bottom right is an impala. An animal like that, they can make their decision that they can get in there, 30 seconds at tops, get in there, grab the animal, pull it off to safety, and then they'll go for it. Interestingly, though, an animal that size, painted dogs are, and I'm going to share with you a little bit about their bite force. Painted dogs are able, 2 dogs are able to pull down that 500-pound animal. And for the cow of the species, I only had 1 dog to do it on the third. I'm going to share with you a little bit further down the presentation how they pull that trick off. So whilst people have this idea that packing power is needed to pull down, but actually in the case of painted dogs, it's not. It might be in wolves. So we're not sure. Oh, it is working. Wow. Painted dogs are Ambush predators. When you say this is ambush what they're doing now. People have this confusion that ambush means I'm like a lion that sits and waits. No, they're an ambush predator. We just hide until the last possible. And this is why habitat is so important for pennant dogs. You see here, obviously the chase is on, and they don't eat giraffe, but there's a fun story about pennant dogs and giraffe. It's really interesting. And there's that impala going the other way, doing the stotting movement, saying, I'm fit, don't go for me. But it doesn't last for very long. The story about pennant dogs and giraffe is that they're the only species I know that train their youngsters on non-target species deliberately. So what's the point of disturbing all your target species with a bunch of rookies? So they train their yearlings, all the motor skills, like to go in and break a herd or whatever they're going to be doing on giraffe and zebra, two non-target species. Very, 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 very neat. When they do catch something, that basically results in 2 dogs after 3 minutes. Painted dogs have got a stomach capacity which is obscene. I mean, they weigh 50 pounds, they can eat 25. They can almost eat half their body weight. And I'm going to show you some clips. And they have to do that for 2 reasons. One of the reasons, obviously, is if you kill a big animal, you can't waste it. And interestingly, if they were to kill a 500-pound cunicle, they'll only do it when it's a big pack. Not because they haven't got the ability to kill it, but they haven't got the ability to carry it all away in their stomach. And I mentioned, now talking a little bit, Gerald asked me about skulls. I know he's skull obsessed, so I'm proof obsessed, he's skull obsessed. And I was sharing with you how do they do what they do. And painted dogs have got a very unique dentition. They've got a dentition that enables them to cut bone and eat meat much faster with very little mechanical effort. And basically, if you look at this wolf skull, it's quite a long, elongated skull. Painted dog skull has got something almost as a hybrid between a wolf skull and a blended skull, the compression. That compression causes a much greater bite force. Painted dogs, in a painted by bird, got a bite force that is higher than a hyena. And you hear about hyenas and their bite force, painted dogs have got one that's bigger because they've got the mechanical advantage. The bite force has enabled the difference in the skull morphology. And what is fascinating, you see that skull up there, it's got a big bulbous brain. Well, historically in the wolf, or the early painted dog, before the evolution sociality, this was what their skull would look like. And this would have been masseter muscles. And these masseter, the removal of these, this need for masseter muscles, because you've got a better bite force, is enabled for a better brain power. They've got a language that is probably equal to that of a dolphin, though it would take it 20, 30 years to unravel. I still, to this day, periodically hear painted dog noises that I've never heard in my life. After all these years of study, they suddenly come up, and I'm like, where did that come from? It's incredible, the linguistic capacity, so that's a shame. And so it's just a little snapshot of the species. And if anyone wants to ask any question about them at any time, whether we zoom in or out, obviously I can't go through the whole biology in one presentation. Probably take about 50 presentations to go through the intricate biology of painted dogs. But the main thing is about them is their social system. It's probably one of the highest. We actually classify them as eusocial. So one of the truly social species. And the social system is unique in that there is no dominance. So we do not call the lead pair the dominant pair. We call them the alpha pair. And they lead by consensus. So in other words, how, for example, are the alphas chosen? They're not chosen by some big combat battle, which is actually counterproductive if we would only learn, but we can't as human beings, at least. These pups at this age, the male and the female cohort, a single cohort, will choose their future alpha at pup stage. So between 0 and 18 months, these pups, these two here, they were two brothers or two sisters, they are starting to determine who's who in the pack and which dog they're going to follow. And then that will always be the dog that is they see as the leader, the smartest. And so they're not even choosing it's not the biggest dog, it's the one, we can actually predict who is going to be the alpha by watching the pups. And it's often the one that when the dogs come across something like a novel topic, so say a tortoise on the ground, they've never seen it, they're all going, oh my God, what's that? And there'll be one pup will go forward, and that'll be the one that goes, it's safe. And then all can say, we can play. So that pup gets brownie points, and that pup ultimately, when they go to this dispersal age, at about 2 to 3 years for males and 18 months to 2.5 years for females, they will know which dog they're going to follow. So there's no leadership context. And then when cohorts separate and disperse, there'll be cohorts from other packs. The males go hundreds to thousands go thousands of kilometers looking for mates. The females are very safe, which is what we've known in ecology. We call it proven female syndrome, which is very wise, in fact. It's only us silly buggers that go doing silly things like hanging on chandeliers and getting drunk in bars. But seriously, they are a social species, they are exceptional. So they have a system, so every single day, every time a pack wakes up, every dog greets every other dog. And you may say, well, what's the point of that? And it's what we call preemptive conflict resolution. There is no fighting in packs whatsoever. And even inter-pack, pack versus pack, there's it's all noise and no one gets injured. Or so rare as to be a non-event. So you might say, well, where does that come from? What's the point of that? Well, basically, it's like this. If I come into this room and every day I say good morning, every time I see you, I say good morning. When I do screw up, which we all do from time to time, some of us more than most, the conflict is already down there. The level of conflict is down there, and it's acute rather than becoming chronic conflict. It's when someone walks past you and goes every morning, goes, no, I'm not speaking to you. And any dogs have got that off to an art. And so in terms of conflict for mates, there is none, because the female choose if they don't like the males that present themselves, they just leave. And just say, we're off, sorry guys. And they would actually try different packs, different groups of males, until they find a pair of shoes that fits properly and decide those are the ones. And I got this, often when you research animals, they leave open more door questions than answers. And here's one that had still 30 years later, still got me thinking. It was my first watching of documentation of a dispersal group of females. I'm fascinated. I see them with two males who I called Cup and Anvil, and I'm watching for behavioral scientists recording data, recording proximity data, trying to understand what was going on. They were with these dogs for about 10 days, and then when I catch up with the females again, fortunately one had a collar, there was another group of males, so it was like second pair of shoes. Now the second group of males were bigger than the first group of males, and so I thought maybe the males had come in and pushed out the others, or maybe the females preferred bigger males. I mean, you never know. Choices. And it looked like, in my mind, I remember writing in my field notebook, because I'm always trained to use a pencil and not a biro, I was tempted to rub it out, because when I said, I think they're pair bonding, and like 2 hours later, the alpha female disappeared and left these two males. And the next time I called over, she's now with 3 males. And I'm like, well, does she prefer 3 to 2, or has 3 come in, pushed out 2? I still had no answer. Until it was about 2 weeks later, she gave me the answer by her behavior. Because every day they sleep during the day and they sleep in huddles. And in this particular case, they're sleeping, normally the alpha pair will sleep together, but these two groups have been sleeping under separate trees. And the magic's kind of 4 o'clock came, which is the time they normally start to move. And this time they left a little bit early. And the females stood up and they looked at these males. And it was crazy, because normally everyone gets up and greets with a big bundle of excitement. And the males stayed under the tree. They had given a silent signal, we are leaving. And you're like, how did you even communicate that? You're there and I'm there, and it's like, Joel, stay where you're seated, because we're off. So I'm like, okay, off you go. And so I followed them. And I followed these two females through the night to a point, now here's the rub, that was 35 miles away. And they settled down, I'm like, okay, first light. And I woke up and they found the second set of males. So they'd basically gone up, we're going to find Ragtag and Voltaire, which was the two dogs. And then I unrubbed my field, no, I didn't. And how did they do that? They didn't leave them tied to a tree to say, by the way, we're going to leave you tied there until we come back. How did they know where these dogs were? You know, world of communication, obviously, is absolutely exceptional. Any dog packs, social system is such so that it's kin selection where every dog looks after the pups, raises the pups, the brothers of the alpha male. He's fine, he's got full access to the pup, he's only helping raise his brother's pups, so that's why this whole system works. They wean the pups really early. These pups are 2 weeks old, and already the rest of the pack is dropping meat in front of the pups to try and encourage them to wean. And by 3 weeks old, these pups will be fully weaned of milk. They've got one of the most, because they've got very high metabolism, they've got explosive growth rates in the first 24 weeks. And in the first 12 weeks, their evolution designed to have legs that grow exceptionally fast. When you think at 12 weeks, those pups might be doing 5 miles a day. So it's exceptional. And so they pack food into them at an exceptional rate. This, by the way, just as an aside, because I think I mentioned lastly in the presentation that one of our big threats is tourism at dens and Attenboroughs and filmmakers and film crews. I know they're very great movies, but the fact is that they reflect that these pups, as you can imagine, high metabolism. They have to eat, sleep, a few hours later, fill up again, eat, sleep, grow. But if you miss those meals, you miss the growth spurt. And that means that, and here's just a little side of data that we've just finished analyzing, is that pups born at dens that were disturbed by filmmakers and tourists and sometimes researchers have leg lengths that are significantly shorter as adults. And that translates into those individuals with cure less food. No surprise, you can't catch an impala with short legs. I can testify to that. Early on, just to share with you 35 years ago, I realized, as one of the first myself to realize that we have to involve communities. And I got involved with this particular community because there was an incident of snaring at a den. And the snaring was traditional medicine. And I said to find out, I said, well, what's this? What did you get? What's it worth? I said, $100. I said, what? So you killed a pack of an endangered species or enough of them to mess them up badly for $100. I said, well, I've got a conservation plan here. I said, next year the dog's den, I'll pay you $100 to find the den. I'll pay you $100 to look after the den. And there's $100 going to the community, use for whatever they want, but preferably the school. That stopped it. The problem was, for $300, the problem was solved for many, many years. And then once they get out of the habit of snaring dens, and so, ultimately, as a conservation biologist, you have to try to get to the root of the problem, and the field work marries into what you're doing. Obviously, conservation education has always been very key to me. That was me a few years ago, like 35 years ago. But always it was important to me to bring to people and kids what we were doing. What was it all about? And I've tried to make it as much fun as possible. And some of the benefits of this you never realise until many years later. And one of my top now graduated with a master's degree, and a woman, a lady who I mentored for some 2 or 3 years, helped to get towards into her master's program. And I said, what got you into wanting to be a conservation biologist? She said, you. I said, what do you mean me? I said, you only joined me. She said, you came to my classroom when I was 8 years old, dressed with a dog stick. From that day on, I wanted to be a conservation biologist. So that's what it takes. Thank you, John. So you never know where you're going to hit target. Right, now where are we? And the nitty-gritty of our landscape of our study area. I'm very excited to be a part of something called CASA, the Vanga Zambezi Frontier Park Initiative. It was a popcorn idea of a number of conservationists, and it's now become reality. It is 5 countries that have come together to try and create interconnecting landscapes. Sorry for that, everybody. Switch your phone off so you can present that. Anyway, and within CASA, we've got a carnivore coalition. And the Carnivore Coalition, we're one of wildlife carnivore biologists right across the 5 countries. We get together and we discuss how we can work as a team to solve bigger issues. And within that, different individuals, of which I'm one, have been given sort of keep like a dog with a job. So within that, I've been given the mission to manage a transition corridor area between one national park, Wanga National Park, and Chobe National Park. And it's quite a big remit. And that's not just for painted dog, but for all species. Give you some idea of my study area. My study area is 6,500 square kilometers, which is the size of Delaware. I mean, we have these big study areas. It's a lot of work, a lot of effort. And in my particular case, the challenge is we've got multi-user landscapes. And when you've got multi-user landscapes, that's always more problems for wildlife. And so here we've got a mixture of private areas, communal areas, forestry areas, and national parks. And through this top section, I'm sure we're quiet on, but then I'll let you know my pointer. Oh, maybe, no, that's a shocking. Sorry, I've been disorganized my first section. But running through that top area is a road. Another day. Anyway, never mind. Oh, no, that's a fire. Anyway, so through one of those areas, right in that top left corner, there's a section of road that's 50 miles long, which kills thousands and thousands of birds every year, because it's running right through an intense wildlife area. But it's public access, so anyone's allowed to go there. Access road through Victoria Falls and Botswana. What are we doing? What's our main focal work? Well, a lot of what we're doing is non-invasive, camera trapping, and fecal sampling is the best. I'm totally passionate about feces, as John is about in skulls, and I can't get enough of it, you know. And obviously, we're looking from genetics, we're looking at parasites, we're looking at stress hormones, we're looking at air. But more importantly, and obviously, our whole mantra is that any conservation effort must be underpinned by science, or some fact. At least you've got some idea, well, why you're going up that avenue. Because certainly in the past, there was none of that. It was like, oh, I know what the answer is. And you end up being completely mindless. But more importantly, what we're all about is we want to have many people join us, and I want people to get other students to get excited about conservation and conservation farming. And particularly in my case, is that I want my young graduates, Zimbabwean graduates, who often get no opportunity to come to tomorrow's conservation farming. I want to help them take them by the nose. We do have a very high intake of women because we biased the ball a little bit in that court. Because in Zimbabwe, women are often denied an education, and we try to break that mold and get some of these young ladies into master's programs, or at least have them as undergrads. And my mission also is that I figure if I can get them as passionate about feces as I am, my problem for life, they're solved. Because it is getting them into the field that really makes a difference for a lot of these young students. They get to university, they get no background experience, they don't get field trips in Zimbabwe. And so the whole mission is to help them move forward. Here's an example. We also, when we raise funds, a lot of our funding will go towards helping these young students become tomorrow's conservation partners. And this young lady you're seeing here is our poster child, because she's from one of the rural villages. And when she was 16 years old, she was going to be pulled from school long before she could graduate, get enough high school experience to qualify for university. We funded her through her last 3 years at school. We funded her through university. She's like 3 months away from being the first woman ever in a rural communal area of some thousands of kilometers to graduate with a bachelor's degree in science, in particular in science. So this is what we're up to. And in fact, we are beginning to dedicate a lab towards these students, so that students like her will start to be able to have a lab that they can do genetic work, they can do fecal work, they can do everything they want in a field-based situation. We also are very keen on, obviously, can I continue the education work? I just don't do it all myself now. I have an educator Zulu who was Joel invited to NIRB. And again, the whole idea is to have more of these kids learning about what the biologists do, learn about the devils in the detail, about the insects and everything else and the connections. And we're also, in fact, COVID, this would have been a complete picture. We're building a bush camp for kids, because I built one before in another area where kids can come and for an immersion experience of 5 or 6 days for conservation learning experience. Unfortunately, due to COVID, this was a co-funded project and one of the funders had to pull out. That happened. So we're still waiting for the other half coming from somewhere else, but we'll get there. Habitat loss is an issue, and we are, as an organisation, though we may fall under the umbrella of Painted Dog Research Trust, we may say, what have indigenous trees and native tree species got to do with anything? Well, habitat is just disappearing everywhere. And what we realise, state of knowledge, is even if I had 20,000 trees now and planted them, most of them would die. We realise that the state of knowledge and how to plant indigenous trees, get them to survive in a semi-arid environment is almost nil. And in fact, the currents are saying in a lot of these projects, oh, we're going to go to tree planting, we're going to tree planting day, we've planted thousands of trees, everyone pats themselves on the back. But when 999 out of 1,000 die, what's the point? And we're actually, a lot of we are are focusing heavily on trying to understand the process of afforestation. And what, just out of interest, we are using a system, or trialing a system, that was what we call pocket forests. And it was adopted by a Japanese biologist some 30 years ago, but no one paid any attention to this incredible research that shows that you plant a forest like really tight. So you take a small area, smaller than half the size of this room, and you plant it really tightly. It's spaced at about a yard apart per tree. You may say, well, that's ridiculous. But then you get the competition of different multi-species, and that seems to be the trip in the sand. Some of my students now we're looking at the impact of that on our own planting. We're finding there's significant difference in the fungal activity quite quickly. Fungal and microbial activity, which of course microbes are unsung heroes of conservation. I don't think many of us realise this, but they are. One of our major problems are speeding vehicles. Obviously, they don't just impact painted dogs. We are spending a large amount of our budget trying to work out how to solve it. The whole concept is that if we can find things that actually work, we can then roll that out elsewhere. So on this one 50-mile section of road, as I said, 4,000 to 8,000 vertebrates are killed every year. Obviously, a vertebrate might only be a small snake, but to me, I love snakes, and that matters as much as the buffalo, the picture, and the hind, and the painted dog. And the intensity of this road is characterized by, for example, we had in 2020, one of our study packs had pups 10, 15 miles away from the road. They went nomadic at 12 weeks old, and by 14 weeks old, all the pups were dead, and 2 of the adults hit by cars. And that was actually in the COVID situation. So we're working with police on that. We're working on trying to provide police the resources. We're trying to get laws changed in government relating to speed limits in public access roads that run through wildlife areas. It's a big job. And when I said that in the beginning, in 1987, I was beating my head against walls and battles with ranchers. And it took me 13 years until 2020, when finally the last shot on a painted dog happened. The last painted dog was killed in Zimbabwe. And followed by a prosecution that took me 2 years to pull together. And that was it. Since then, no painted dog has been shot in Zimbabwe. It's the only country that's ever happened. And I remember patting myself on the back thinking that was an amazing 13, 14, 15 years of work. But you know what? I think dealing with traffic and people probably far greater and far worse than dealing with, well, they were rednecks. These guys were pretty gun happy. So these are the issues. And in fact, this singular road has successfully stopped all pack reproduction. You know, every year they get close to having, none of these pups are ever making dispersal age. So therefore, what have we got? We've got a sink. You know, the vacuum effect rears its ugly head. And the vacuum effect basically means that move everyone out of this room, the room is vacant, another pack comes in and says, oh, this is a nice place for catching kudu, duiker, and impala, and then they're not aware, and it's called an ecological trap, but they're making the right biological cues, but they don't realize what's following in the week. I'll share with you some of our more direct conservation actions. This Operation Anne was a pack that was basically doomed. There was 8 dogs in the pack that were doing very well. Trucks and cars wiped out 3, meaning the pack was 5 at the point when the alpha female was fully pregnant, just about to drop. And the pack of 5 is a critical pack mass to be able to successfully bring enough food back. 5 wasn't it. And so we find this pack at a den, pups that were basically 3 days old, and you can see the state of the alpha females. She was screaming and begging for food, the pups were going to die. And so we contacted National Parks and we said, can we intervene? And they said, well, you want to dig the pups out of the den? Because that seems to be often standard. We're going to save the animal by digging them out of the den. You know, save the, and I said, no, absolutely not. I said, that's not very productive. Then what do we do with the pups? You know, once we've got them as adults, then we can rehabilitate, get them back into the wild. I said, I want to do a supplementary feed. I said, that's far cheaper, a bit like the $300 for the poacher. So we started a supplementary feed program. And because we were aware of what painted dog pups ate in the wild already, what we fed them the same way that make sure the pups got enough food to look like this. Now you may think that that looks like a bloated tick, and you might be right, it does look like a bloated tick. That pup in 3 hours will want another meal. And it's all going into growth. And this is what they do in the wild. That's how they feed their pups. They feed them capacity, wait a few hours. A painted dog is then you've got a different stomach musculature, as found out documented by Griff Ewer in the book The Carnivore, one of the first books on carnivores. And she said, because wolves, for example, when they regurgitate, everything comes up. The painted dogs are almost like they can deliver, 2 pounds, 3 pounds, 4 pounds. Exactly, they can deliver exactly the amount they require. So we fed the interview every week, every 3 days, every 5 days. We were monitoring the whole thing through camera tracks, and we managed at 12 weeks to. I just love this. I just love the shot. These are camera trap photos, obviously. Every dog's an individual. This probably dog was never destined to be an alpha. He had was on his own mission, digging holes all day. While all the rest of the pups were playing, so I called them Digger. This is the alpha female at 12 weeks old, 12 weeks after the whelping. And as you can see, she picked up condition really, really well. They are capable of having really large litters. I mentioned a little bit about the den disturbance and how it would affect weaning, affect feeding rates. Because obviously an alpha female is not going to stand for very long in front of a camera like this. Obviously it will stand in front of the camera trap, but not. And I've already mentioned some of the challenges from den disturbance, apart from the fact that the dogs move the den, and then when the pups are too small, they're not aware that the photographer's not going to do any harm, and it's perceived threat, and they lose pups on the move. Painted dogs, by the way, can have litters up to 18 or 20 dogs, 20 pups, but that's directly dependent on the pack size. So even though only one female breeds, I'm not sure I mentioned that, in a pack, the size of her supporting pack determines how many pups she has. Basically, it's a food thing. Snaring is an issue, and we're basically working on preventative medicine, designing different shapes and sizes of anti-snare collars and they do work. Just wish we could get the dogs to volunteer to have them on without chasing them around trying to get collars on them. It's not always that easy. Got some of this art here is from snare wire that we get from anti-poaching units, and we then turn that into art, and the proceeds go back. That's it, good man. We've got, we're very busy with this is Zulu again, and he's shortly going to be kicked out of our lab, because our lab's going to become a lab, and we're going to build him his own classroom. At the moment, it's one of those where you start a project, and a room everyone's using the room for storage and this and that and the other. So, and the whole thing is, and we do welcome people to visit us because they interact in another way. So this is why I'm quite excited that we are opening our doors to having people, students, to come and visit us. Visiting professors are willing to come bring their skill set to us and share that knowledge. And we're trying to set up partnerships small or larger numbers, we have accommodation, very simple, bed and a desk, what else do you need? Type accommodation that means that we can make it affordable. People to come and share with Africa, but also to share with our students, which is great, because it's great value for us. I'm just going to leave you with a passing thought. As I say, I could talk all day. That was in January 2020, that operation was over. And the pack disappeared. As dogs do, they'll move 10, 20, 30 miles a day. They have territories that are somewhere around 500 square miles at least, and they can be anywhere. And the only way we can find most of them is anyway, by using camera traps, just hoping that we pick them up. We flood the area with camera traps. And we had nothing of them. What about the pups? The 5 pups that were born, we've managed to get all 5 pups to 12 weeks old. But that's only the beginning of the story. Well, we finally picked up with them in August 2022. August 2021 it should have been. We're not in August 2022 yet. Good pickup on mine. We captured them on camera, and at least 4 out of the 5 original pups had survived. I say at least because the camera trap doesn't pick up everybody in the room. And the pack surviving numbered 9, which is a good number anyway. And the pups that we say had helped raise another litter of 5 pups. So the total pack size was 14. At least, for the and but these are some of the conservation efforts that we have, that we do. And when I said at the beginning in 1988, Zimbabwean dog population, 200 dogs. Nationally now, the Zimbabwean dog population is plus minus 750. That's 35 years later, but you can make a difference in conservation. We must never get negative. We must stay on track, stay strong, and thank you for listening.
Dr. Greg, thank you so much for that really great presentation. And obviously, if you guys have any particular questions, we'd be happy to ask those. Although if you want to support any of the work that's going on there in Zimbabwe, like I say, we do actually have a QR code over here that you can scan and get a direct donation, or of course you can donate again any items over there. But to start off with questions, I actually have a question for you, Greg. So early on you mentioned that panda dogs are considered like a eusocial species, right? Now we have a social species over at the zoo that are mole rats.
Yes.
But those are like probably 2 fewest of any animals that of mammals that could be considered eusocial.
Absolutely. Mole rat.
Usually, what is considered eusocial?
Insect.
Right.
And in fact, interestingly, the entomologist fiercely held eusociality is our domain. And then, I can't remember the author now, published the eusociality continuum.
Wilson.
Neil Wilson. No, he didn't publish the eusociality continuum. He was, I mean, great, amazing biologist, but it wasn't he.
He does.
No, Hamilton was the first one to bring up the whole subject of eusociality. But he was focusing particularly on insects. And everyone was denying that other species were not going to fit under the eusociality. But absolutely, Hamilton was the founder of the term eusociality. You're absolutely correct there. But I'm trying to think of the author that then much later, 20, 30 years later, came up with the eusociality continuum concept. And that's why, and in that specifically, mole rats and panda dogs were, say, considered far enough up the continuum.
So fundamentally, what does that mean for those that don't know what eusociality really is all about?
Trying to put eusociality basically means that every member had division of labor, every dog has a job, role, division of, so you have the alpha to do this, you have the beast to do that, you have the camel to do that. So that's in a nutshell, in its basic form. So for example, penny dogs are amazing division of labour. When pups are born, when a pack of pups are born, the adults will know which pups are good at what role within the pack. And they'll define those roles in that role. For example, there was an anecdotal, we had one dog in our study area, I called him Magellan, because he was always lost. And I'm like, and really you might say, well, Magellan was a great explorer and navigator. Well, Magellan Corporation has donated us 2 GPS units that didn't work, and I took the dog on the GPS units to run through each other. This does happen sometimes, conservation projects where people try to dump stuff. Oh, I'm sure they'll love that computer that doesn't work. So it ain't good enough for you, it's not good enough for me. And I said, one day, I should look and say, well, why is the pack putting everyone together? What does he have any value in the pack altogether? And I looked really hard to see where he fits in. Then I realized that, hey, he could eat meat if he got there on time. But not only that, he could then help strip the carcass slightly faster. And then if the hyenas came, there was less food for them. And then when it came to denning season, they always have to find a dog to look after the pups. And they have this red, green, and amber sort of risk factor. But if it was green and pretty safe, Magellan always got the dog. And if it was really dangerous, like a lion or something around, they would detect it. Sometimes even the alpha. So they're just very good at this division of labour. And for example, I remember had a dog that broke his leg, and he was one of the top hunters that always working on the alpha. Breaks his leg, okay, well then you better be pup ready, help, be tough, pup disciplinarian. And they have a specific job, dogs that will do that job. You're the disciplinarian, you're the babysitter, this is where you fit in the hunting party. It's very, very, very neat.
Thank you.
All right.
Other questions? Okay. I have a crazy question.
I don't know. I'm not crazy about anything.
In one of your pictures, you had an amazing suit that looked like a painted dog. I wonder, where could you get such a suit?
Naked. in fact, my painted dog suits have been kind of famous because I made that when I go to schools, and then when I was doing my PhD, an email came around saying, I'm running the London Marathon. Has anyone got a project that they would like to support? I'm like, yes. I mean, anyway, so this guy David contacted me and I said, come to my office, the office in Oxford doesn't qualify, and there were 5 of us crammed for a room with desk paper. Like, you have to 60 tape say, this is my specs. I don't need money, got space for your pen on my desk. And he came in and he said, what about, will I be able to run in the box? I said, oh, no, really. He said, where will I get it? He asked the same question. He said, where will I get the box? I said, I got one. Well, this thing was like what we call a boiler suit, really thick, industrial grade. And he looked, he said, Greg, he said, I can't run. So then he said, I'm trying to run a marathon, I'm not a walkathon. And they said, oh, I'll go to manufacturing. So I'll go to the manufacturer and I'll see if I can't get someone to make one. They're a bespoke company. Well, they came back with a figure of 500 UK pounds, which in those days was 750 US to $1,000. And I'm like, oh, it's going to fail. So then he said, don't worry, I'll think of something. But then, as a runner, he got these light tights thing that he stuck on, and he kind of sprayed the whole thing with one of these body paint type things. And he came to my office one day, and he got some shoe liners back for the big ears. He came in, how do I look? Well, I just wanted to roll on the floor, wet myself laughing. And of course, I can't do that because he's not going to run an oxygen if I can just laugh. Brilliant. You look absolutely amazing. And it's so streamlined. Doesn't say anything other than But anyway, so on the morning of and of course everyone wants to get kicked out. Get by the BBC or the National Tele on Marathon Day, and you got all the rhinos and the chimps and the hippos and everyone trundling along there. And the whole setup, London Marathon works something like this. You have key points where you're allowed to watch the runners. And you go from pub to pub as a spectator. So early in the morning, I get out of bed, like 5 o'clock, London Marathon, you've got to be really early, 5, 4 o'clock. Put my dog suit, the one you saw, put my dog suit on, start, get into the London Tube, and I'm sitting there, and there's a woman looking at me. Did you get London Be Great Tonight? Finally, she's just about to get off, and she said, what charity are you supporting? And she said, I'll give you £5 if you tell me. I said, fine, done, thanks, Doc. Actually, I thought she gave me £5 then. So then I get to my first pub and dressed in my dog suit. Best British humour, the barman sees me and says, oh, well, I said, I'd like a pint of this, and he said, would you like in a glass or a bowl? So then I get to the point to look for David, and sure enough, he picked up by the BBC, because they look and they're like, they've never seen anything like it running around the marathon. And they said, they had to come up, what are you? He said, I'm a painted dog. So there we are, that's a long answer to a short question. Anyway.
So in other words, I should make one myself.
If you want one, you should make one. There was somebody in Miami came up to me after and said, we would like to make some. And I said, I would love you to make some. I said, if you do, I said, make a dozen for the kids program. Because that was it. Because in the early days, as I say, the grad student, the now master student, who saw mini dogs, I also had 5 mini dog suits. And I used to put all the kids in, and then we'd have one half was researchers and the other half was the pack in hiding. And they always used to make me laugh, because kids always used to hide in the toilet. You know, who was like nothing ever changed, does it? You find this pack of dogs hiding in the toilet. So yeah, I know someone wants to take on board a project. I'm sure Joe.
Yeah, we got some zoo camp kids that I would love to get into painted dog costumes, and but we've also got some wonderful volunteers who have a remarkable ability to sew. At our zoo, so they take bird feed bags and sew them into like grocery bags and things. So they do wonderful things. Maybe.
I'll never say no. All right. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
How are the numbers of the painted dogs doing in any of the surrounding countries there? You know, are they larger, or are they declining, or?
Botswana has had an increase, and then it's stable, maybe slightly declining now. And again, traffic is wiping out dogs in Botswana as much as it's wiping out painted dogs in Zimbabwe and anywhere else in Africa. And in fact, the recent papers come out to show that some of these high-speed roads, unless we mitigate them, dogs they just can't get enough of them across the other side, and then they cross them, and then they come back. And by the time they come back, they're back to. So we're working really hard on that. The numbers are still very low in Africa, and in Central and West African countries, dogs are exit cases. I mean, I was in Cameroon for 3 years doing a study, trying to find out, commissioned by WWF to say, are they there? We've been funding a project that says they're there, but we don't believe it. It turns out they were right. There was no dogs there, and they've been shot out. But in South Africa, they've got huge genetic issues, where you can get genetic stock from, and so their numbers are good, but they're demographically good, but genetically very, very poor. In fact, South Africa's got the lowest genetic diversity anywhere in Africa.
Do you think that is from isolation?
Oh, yes, I mean, so the South African dog population was annihilated. I mean, the persecution of painted dogs started in 1900 with the ranch. And there were bounties on them, like the wolves. They were taken to the point where there were bounties in South Africa by 1925, with the exception of maybe the Kruger National Park once declared. There were no painted dogs in South Africa at all. Zimbabwe, it took until 1947 before they got to that same point where there were nil returns on the bounties, not because anyone stopped shooting there were no dogs to shoot. But they were illegally slaughtered in the national park. And even some of them, I met even some of the earlier rangers, and one of the park's colonists of the day, 19, whatever it was. He came to one of my meetings and said, no, he said, I hear what you say, but these things would cannibalize themselves. I said, they're cannibals. It's a highly social species. And he said, well, I have first-hand evidence. I'm like, wow, did you actually see it, Bob? Be cannibalized by another pack member or two packs? I said, no. He said, I got to a carcass. He said, and there was a dead dog all ripped apart at the carcass. He said, I said, so what that? He said, well, the wolves were feeding and they must have been in the feeding fencing and accidentally caught one of their. I said, were there any lion or hyena footprints there? Well, I didn't need to look. Yeah, prejudice is ruling okay.
Well, and I think that prejudice is something that we all understand because, I come from the state of Michigan. And in the state of Michigan, wolves were extirpated except for one small island up in Lake Superior. And, those populations have started to come back, and they've come back at least to a level that now people are getting scared of wolves. We worked for over 30 years to try to get that population to come back. But it's that same old big bad wolf syndrome, that fear of carnivores.
And it's media.
It is.
But then, we have to be out the media.
Yeah. And so my question for you is because, one of the reasons we want to have this conversation at the zoo is we want to see what has happened in Zimbabwe and the other countries there to, yes, you've got this endangered species, and what are you guys doing to make that change in the public perception of painted dogs? And how can we get people here in our own country, in our states, to do the same? Because if you talk about wolves, there's not a lot of wolves, and so therefore people are like, oh, okay, wolves would be so bad. But if there's a lot of wolves, they're like, no, we don't want them. Not in our backyard, right? And how do people feel about coyotes?
Yeah.
Right? As soon as I say that word, people are, right? Because so many people are like, the only good coyote is a dead coyote. Well, in the absence of wolves, of course, coyotes are going to fill that niche, but they run into the exact same persecution and problem that wolves ran into. So it's going to be this continuous loop, and so that is my question, and something that we hope to address in the exhibit at the zoo, because we're going to do a direct comparison between painted dogs and wolves and persecution and prejudice facing carnivores really all over the world, right? Do you have any insights on
Well,
that?
I do only not necessarily insight for the wolf population, but what I do have, I know how we changed the wolf population. We turned the human population around. Well, the first thing was that I made it for some, just was, and one of the things you did, you realize you represented this many years later, was that when I started the dog world, I decided that the only thing that I'm ever going to tell anybody about painted dogs was what I knew was fact. And I said, well, have you heard the story? I'm like, I don't know. It might be true, it might not be true. But what about all the cattle they killed? So I did. And when I could find out that the dogs were responsible for 1.7% of the farmers' losses in a major cattle. 1.7%. Plastic bags and baler twine and cattle swallowing foreign objects accounted for 17%. So, I mean, yeah, so, if 10 times more stock were killed by plastic bags. And then I recounted the story that I made a mistake with all people actually start to think differently. And then again, there was an awareness thing. It wasn't just going to the schools that were immediately around me. If any school in Zimbabwe said, would you come? I'd say, well, you're the first to ask this year. I did so many presentations here. Schools, more remote, but I will make a plan. And then the other one was using whatever medium. In those days, radio was the medium to get the message across. And radio was still to a point used a lot in Zimbabwe, but not as much as it was then. And we used to have this weekly radio program, weekly every 2 weeks, and it was called Wildlife Forum. And every month at least was a program done by us, and we had this incredible presenter, who everyone has loved. Someone said I had the kind of afterwards type voice, but really amazing. And everyone listened to him and attended. And he would come and we would spend 2 days solid during the whole year's work. And then he would introduce, and now it's July, and I'm back to banking, going very right. It's now December, the rains have come, and just about one many pictures. And but also it was I mean, with the ranchers there were 2 things. One was when I was working with the ranchers themselves, let's say, God forbid all of you were redneck ranchers. I would pity you, but anyway. And I'd always find out who in the pack, in their group, who did they listen to? And then that was their alpha, their leader. That was the person I would sit down and talk to. Because he would then be the one that would try and lift, check it. Wasn't me. And then I did have very tricks that worked on the collaring, because I couldn't afford radio collars. But so the ranchers, and again, it's what they, sometimes you have to say, well, why do you believe that the dogs are doing? Oh, there's hundreds of them. There's at least 60 or 70. Okay, no, there's not. There's 3 packs or 4 packs that are using an area, 5,000 square kilometers, or whatever it was. And I said, and they don't live there all the time. And oh no, it's the same, it's different pack. I'm saying, no, it's not the same pack. So we had this. And they would say to me, well, we don't believe you. You're just saying that. Why shouldn't they? I mean, if I were on those nights, yeah, sure. I mean, I could teleport heat from time to time. So then I said, okay, I'm going to make sure that you can see for yourself that it's different packs. Because I mean, they're not attuned to noticing like the researchers, like this will got a slightly different code pack. But we say, well, do of course. That's why they're called painted dog. And I started putting coloured belts on as many dogs as I could get. Different packs. So we had the yellow pack, green pack, blue pack, red pack. And then they themselves were suddenly tuning. They had the radio network. Hey, see the yellow pack. Well, that's unbelievable. An hour ago, I saw the yellow pack. Weird that they knew the distance between themselves. So they started to see themselves. And then, of course, there was a little stroke of luck, which I had to keep my mouth shut. Was that the collar belting was yellow, and the tape I used was pretty rubbish, actually. And slowly but surely, all the tape came off. So all 5 packs with the yellow pack. They say, oh, the yellow pack. What's happened to the blue pack? What about the blue pack? Oh, they died. They got hit by cars. They got pulled in the snare. No, we're only down to 1 pack now. Oh, okay. I never told them. But it did help. And again, it was a lot of it was education. And particularly for children. The children can change parents' minds. But ultimately, anyway, they grow up, thank goodness. Speaking more of the conservation, but whether they like it or not. And the ranchers in those days, they wouldn't even let me near their children. I mean, not that I was a predator of any description, but when the ranchers had their hoedowns, I'd always be there. So once I had to get to know the ranch, and then when they've got their barbecues and everything, the kids would be there. And I mean, if this was serious stuff, they see me talking to the kids, and they say, don't talking to work. And then I'm thinking, well, I have to get my conservation message to these kids. Well, the luck was that I knew that all the ranch children were boarding school. The boarding school was 200 miles away in Bulawayo. But guess what? Where I used to go, to Bulawayo, and I do all the kids at the school, which included the ranch kids. And then one of the next hoedowns, the rancher and his wife came up to me, and they were walking quite forcefully, and they were like, and he's like, goes right behind him, and he's like, well, I need to talk to you. My wife and I need to talk to you. I said, he said, do you? And then he stopped, do you? His wife said, well, go on, tell him. And he said, well, do you? And she was sick and tired, couldn't blurt out what he was going to say, do you what? She said, what he's trying to ask you is, do you really believe that there's a way forward for predators and Raj? And of course, well, I'm going to say no. Of course, she said yes. And then she's like, because our daughter thinks so. And I said, when does she go to school? And I went, yes. And it is. I mean, the children's education is absolutely critical. The Red Riding Hood story can also be turned around. I've got a little egg golf actually be turned around. We need to do the truth about these species, but there was also a position that people have to form that emotional bond. It can be done. Absolutely. And there is obviously now the Pendadox involved is held, the musty animal, tourist wise, the musty animal. People are fascinated about it. I mean, I get it. And I work hard to educate the guys. So they're not feeding garbage people. So they themselves have got data about how many cattle dogs don't eat.
Right. Yeah, that's
It's the same with wolves. If you really get down to the data, it ain't that much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're definitely working on that story because again, it's the power of story, right? And story backed by evidence.
Yeah, it's fact-based.
Yeah, that's definitely what we're all working.
Question.
So the dogs are coming to
Yes.
Yeah, so definitely within the United States, there's a population within zoos. So that's where they would be coming from. Yeah.
I mean, in fact, on the zoo population in the States, 25 years ago, it was on its knees. No one in captivity knew how to work with them. I used to visit every single zoo and say, this is wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. You don't understand the species, not in a negative way. And slowly but surely they got around with the fact. They realized how much they had no one had any idea how much you risk with this. Well, of course, if you're a highly social, intellectual species and you're stuck in a prison, you need someone to come and bring you books every day.
There's a great irony to that because back in the day when I was a zookeeper, I cared for painted dogs, and those stories, those misinformed stories that you said about, people used to say this, people used to say that about painted dogs. We did in zoos. We gave out misinformation because it just wasn't.
No one was giving you the right information.
Exactly, and we didn't enrich them well enough, and their exhibits weren't nearly as big, and so there were so many things. And so for us to bring painted dogs here to the Quad Cities, and this is the key point, to begin a relationship with someone who has that experience, not just in the field, but also that experience with working with other zoos, knowing what works, what doesn't, and then even to have them consult on our design and our plan. That's pretty powerful, right? And a lot of people wonder, what's happening at Niali. Well, that is happening at Niali, right? It is not the little zoo from 10 years ago that people were wondering if the doors were going to stay. You know, we've been able in the last 5 to 6 years turn that facility around for one questionable survival into one that's becoming, you know, a conservation juggernaut here in our community, right? And leadership in this community. Of the start the Bi-State Conservation Action Network here in this community. So that's taking conservation organizations from Mayhem Marsh to the River Action to Living Lands and Waters, and bringing us all together so that we can do things for our community. And that community conservation is so important. That's how the Rusty Patch Bubble will be returned to the Quad Cities, right? 5 years ago, it wasn't here, and now every participant within that group now has Rusty Patch Bumblebees on their sites, right? So that's that collaboration that we're working toward. You know, so whether that's locally or globally, we want to make sure that people understand that we can do that, and we can make an impact really everywhere, but definitely here. So thank you all so much for coming tonight. If you want some more information, feel free to come down and chat with us. I think there's still some snacks over there, give some, but there are fruit, water. Thank you guys so much for coming. All right. Great, there you go. So,
Yeah, you do.
and Director Perry.
Hi, Sherman. Yeah, Sherman, yes, Paul Sherman. Research Guarantee continues.
He was showing in there because I think we all had dinner together.
We did, yeah.
Yeah. Everybody came out.
So what's the relatedness? Groups, the other social species, either halfway diploid or.
Well, the
Kin selection.
thing with the kin selection, there's only one big that. But that's